you sick and tired of watered-down talk radio? WS Radio. WSRadio.WS, the worldwide leader in Internet talk.
Paraglider Magazine presents Paraglider Radio. And now your hosts, David and Gabriel Jebb.
All right, we're rolling back into the last segment here of the Paraglider show. We're going to probably wrap up the conversation with some of the stuff that we had discussed with Murray regarding maybe water landings, maybe put a little bit of closure to the deflation subject, and then give our goodbyes, and we'll see you all next week. So, last segment coming up. You guys stay tuned, and we're going to be right back with you with the Paraglider Radio Talk Show on WSRadio.com, worldwide leader in Internet talk.
Segment, and we've had a pretty full day. It looks like Gabriel, you're going to be here next week, solo, man.
Yeah, cool.
So,
cool. Hey, I'm going to need some help next week, guys. So if you want to call in or start thinking now about how you're going to help out Gabe in the Paraglider show, please do.
It's tough to sit here for 2 hours and sit here by yourself, especially, and talk to yourself. So.
Well, who said I'm going to sit by myself?
Oh, well,
I'm going to invite
you'll...
somebody in, I think.
Yeah,
We'll see. I don't know if the strippers are going to be available.
Yeah,
but
well,
if
they
they
better
are.
not be, because your girlfriend's going to be seeing you in a few
I
days
know, I'm
after
just
the
kidding.
show.
That's true, actually. Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah, good stuff. Okay, gosh, man. These girlfriends. Okay. Anyways, to get back on it, I think I wanted to keep talking about some of this stuff this segment, but you know, I like your idea. We can talk a bit about reserves. Might as well.
Hey, you know, we were talking earlier to start the show off with about spring and about reserve repacking and so on. And one of the things that I think some of the pilots could really benefit from is starting to develop a philosophy about the same time you start to learn to fly, when and why you might throw your reserve. And oftentimes we hear about people throwing the reserve when they're way too close to the ground or it's too late, and that doesn't work. So let's spend a little time, and maybe if any of you have some things that you'd like to add on the topic, you can give us a call on the toll-free line at 1-888-327-0061. I don't think anybody has an exact formula for when a reserve will be thrown. It's usually
I'll tell you the exact formula from having once had to do it. You know, people always say, when do I need to throw my reserve? And I always answer, you'll know when you have to, because every sense in your body is screaming, oh shit, this one's going to hurt. You'll know because you have no other option left. And it's one of those things where I tell you, the one time that I did have to throw a reserve, there was no hesitation, there was no doubt about it.
Right.
I still had 1,000 feet of altitude, but I was like,
Right.
this thing's not going to come back out, so I'm going to toss it right now.
Right.
You know, and I think for most of the people that I've talked to that, you know, you mentioned Lee earlier today, he also had to throw his reserve once, and he said the same thing. He said, you know, I knew that I had to throw my reserve, and you know, you may spend a second or two or three, or depending on your altitude, you may try to work it out a little bit. But for the most part, it's one of those things where you look up and you go, I've never seen that before, I've never heard of that before, and I don't think this one's going to work out, you know. So that's probably the best answer that I could give.
I've tried to set up some specifics of when I would throw my reserve, and a lot of them have to do with how close I am to the ground and how much, because being close to the ground is really the most critical thing. If you come within 500, 300 feet and you've got a problem and you don't have it worked out by then, there shouldn't be any thought in your mind about your reserve coming out. It may seem like well, maybe the glider's going to pop out at the last minute. You don't have time to play once you get down to that 500-foot mark.
My only qualm with that is that the cascade of events that lead up to a reserve deployment are so epidemic in proportion in terms of what we're used to normally, that a person's not going to know 500 feet from 5,000 feet. They may have been 5,000 feet up, and they may have thought that they were only trying to open up the wing for a second and a half or 2 seconds, when in fact it was a minute. You know, especially the reserve deployments that we're going to start seeing in the near future. You're going to see that a lot of them are not going to have such a high rate of descent where you're plummeting down to the ground, but that they have a higher rate of rotation because of, especially with the aerobatics. I see that a lot of pilots, they're going to start having cravats, and cravats are going to be a real big issue here in the near future. And in a cravat, you're not descending rapidly, but you're rotating really, really fast. And so the problem with that is that you lose any sort of reference in terms of what your altitude is, how far you are horizontally or vertically from any sort of an obstruction. And so, yeah, we've always taught in the school, yeah, 3 to 500 feet is your last chance to toss a reserve. But I mean, I would say, yes, you always need to be aware of where you're at, but
Exactly.
if you're up,
Watching altitude is something that can easily you get away from you. In other words, you've got all this stuff going on. Maybe you're laying on top of your canopy, whatever the case might be, but it's usually going to be something pretty scary.
yeah,
And sometimes to be conscious of, well, I'm falling, I'm at 600 feet now, I'm at 500, I'm at 400. That doesn't always happen. You don't have the time, but
well,
there is a
you don't
certain
you
awareness
don't
that
have
you
the
have to
peace of
develop.
mind, is what it is.
You what?
You don't have the peace of mind.
Right.
Murray just brought up another great part on the messenger here. He said, why not practice the deployment off 10 feet, from 10 feet, coming in for a landing? Bridle will
I
probably
don't
hit
know,
the
but
ground
yeah,
but
yeah. But certainly a lot of guys have sat in their harness for years and never have thrown the reserve sitting in a hangar, just from a rafter.
yeah, that's his next recommendation. He said, have a word with local corporate off-road type that have the zip lines, the kind of slide for life type things where you go down
Oh yeah, yeah,
between the
yeah.
trees
Uh-huh.
and get on one of those things and toss it from there. And that actually that's a good idea.
The bungee jumpers do it sometimes,
Yeah, or off a bungee
Yeah,
cord. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good idea. I don't think most people have to go through that extreme. Other than again, just follow the precautions. Have the repacks done, have the reserve on. If you haven't repacked and you're not sure that you trust the source of the pack job, maybe have a second person look at it. But at the end of the day, somebody else may have repacked your chute for you, but you're the one that's going to be responsible for getting it out of the bag, so you better check that out. And you better be aware of it, because I don't think it would be right for anybody to blame an instructor or a company that did the repacks.
One of the things, one of the things I could mention perhaps is that we're seeing a lot of new harness designs, and we had one student show up not too long ago that had a problem with his speed bar system tangling into the reserve deployment sequence, and had he not practiced that on the hangar, he probably would have not been able to fix it prior to actually having to deploy it in an emergency situation. So again, oftentimes if you're not sure, or you got a new harness, it doesn't hurt to take the reserve, tie yourself in your harness from a rafter, and actually literally pull the reserve out of the bag and toss it. Oftentimes, if it stays in the inner bag, you won't have to repack the whole chute. But the idea of just getting it out of the bag and having it free to toss is certainly one test that you can do with not needing to repack the reserve once you've taken it out of the harness. So try that if you haven't done that at least once, just to see how it comes out and to feel what it feels like. It's not going to feel the same when you're screaming down from a fall, but at least give you a feel for what it looks like. I'm surprised at how many people in this practice series will pull the inner bag out of their harness for the very first time and go, oh, gee, that's not what I expected, or gee, I didn't know it was going to look like that, or whatever.
Right.
You know.
Right. One of the things that Key and I do when we pack a reserve for somebody, especially if they're a local person, it's not one that got shipped into the shop, is we actually have them pull the handle and pull in the pins, just to make sure that the container is going to come out. And it just goes back to prove the point that it's your responsibility to make sure that it comes out. It's also because of what you said exactly. A lot of people have never actually seen the reserve container or the reserve itself. And I encourage you guys, if you're my students or if you're in our area, if you want your reserve repacked, it's not a one-person job. It's a two-man job. And so I always like to have the students there helping me pack their own reserve. And we can show you how to do it. It's going to be, you'll have to do it with a professional a couple of times, but after 3 or 4 times, I'm sure you'd be qualified to do your own. And if you're not from our area, well, next time you send your reserve in to your instructor to have it repacked, ask him if you can sit and watch him. do it, and ask them if you can help them with it, because it is a two-man job. It's a quick job. It takes about 15, 20, 30 minutes, but it's something that you probably get a lot out of. So.
Okay, so let's try to conclude this with just saying that let's start everybody thinking about having a strategy and a sequence of events of when you might need to throw or when you should throw your reserve. And if you don't have one, try to develop one. I think it will help ensure your long-term enjoyment in flying and safety. And it looks like we're getting kind of towards the end of the show, so I'd like to say I'm going to be at Garmisch here in a couple of weeks, the free flight. That's probably the largest exhibition, or one of the largest exhibitions of hang gliding and paragliding in the world. It's held in Garmisch every year, and if you guys would like to get more information on that, you can just type in any of the Google or search engines free flight and go right to the Garmisch free flight website. It's fantastic. We're going to have a good time talking to a lot of people there, so I'll be seeing you there, Gabriel.
And my dad's going to be out of town for a bit, so if you guys want to come out to Torrey and party and not obey the rules, not a problem.
All right, man. Hey, really enjoyed having you on this week, and you guys do stay tuned. We'll be back with you again next week. This is David and Gabe Jebb with the Paraglider Show. Signing off.
WSRadio.ws. When regular radio is just not enough. Worldwide talk that you can count on for fresh new information. Live every day. Or listen on demand on your schedule.